Welcome to the Darkstream, Voxday. Voxday.blogspot.com. Welcome to the unauthorized. Welcome to the reprehensibles. Welcome to the VFM, the Dread Ilk, and of course, the Bears. Always doubt the narrative. Question authority. Question the official story. You know, when I was a kid, a long time ago, question authority was something that all the cool kids would say. It was something that all the rebels and renegades, it was something that we were supposed to lionize, something that we were supposed to look up to. But now somehow, for some reason, we're not only supposed to trust someone, anyone over 30, we are supposed to trust everyone over 30. We're supposed to believe everything that is reported by these low IQ, well-coiffed morons reading teleprompters on the screen. It's ridiculous. So how does this happen? Why are we suddenly expected to accept the narrative, accept the official story, and continue accepting it even when it changes, even when we notice it changing? We are living today in a society of lies. Virtually nothing you know, virtually nothing you think you know that is outside of your direct observation is entirely true. Let me give you an example. My background is in economics. One of the things that there were a number of headlines about was the 2001 recession. This was the post 9/11 recession. I'll just type in 2001 recession into Google. The very first thing. The 2001 recession was an 8-month economic downturn. It began March 2001 and lasted through November 2001. Unemployment continued to climb even after the recession ended. So what is a recession? A recession is 2 quarters of economic contraction. Guess what happens if you look up the numbers, the official numbers, at the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which is the government agency which is charged with keeping track of the official statistics for the economy. That recession no longer exists. They've literally redefined and recalculated and re-estimated and readjusted so that it no longer exists. How can you trust anything? How can you trust any of the media in a place where something as widely known, widely experienced, widely reported, widely accepted, suddenly doesn't exist anymore? We're not getting into the whole Mandela effect and whatnot. We know exactly how it happened. We watched it happen as they readjusted and redefined the official numbers concerned. And now that recession no longer exists. History has somehow magically been transformed. And so it's important to doubt the official story. Another reason is that if you've ever had any experience with the media, any experience at all, you will find that they do not have any interest in the actual truth. They're always interested in their own narrative. Watchman 245, you are banned for lying. I never encouraged Owen Benjamin to do anything on his channel. It wouldn't even, speaking of a world of lies, you can ask Owen. I have never suggested that he talk about anything on his channel with one exception. I did discuss with him the idea of announcing unauthorized.tv. That is the only thing I have ever suggested that he talk about on his channel. I'm not a big believer in telling other people what to do. And I'm not a big believer in other people telling me what to do. And I'm really not any sort of believer at all in allowing people to lie about my actions, my motivations, and my objectives. Watchman claimed that YouTube's demonetization of Owen was legitimate, and he claimed that it was because I had encouraged Owen to use the N-word and other hate speech. Now, considering that I don't ever use that sort of language myself, in fact, I very seldom even use vulgar or obscene language in any of the 5 languages that I know them in. I think that you'd have to be smoking crack to think that I am actively encouraging other people to do so. I don't. In fact, I tell people on a regular basis to clean up their language. I don't permit that kind of language on my blog. So, anyhow, we live in a world of lies. We live in a world that is ruled by the father of lies. And we were told that. We were told that a long, long time ago. And so, we have to realize that, and we have to be prepared for that, and we have to assume that. I have no problem whatsoever with people who tell me, I'm not going to take anything that you say at face value. That's fine with me. I am not going to accept it when people claim that I'm lying. I'll push back pretty hard on that. I've said this before. Possibly the highest praise that anyone has ever given me was by somebody who considers himself to be an enemy of mine, somebody who doesn't like me and doesn't agree with me. But he did say that I don't lie, and that if I said that the sky was green, that he wouldn't even bother to look outside the window. I'm not claiming to be any sort of moral model or something in this regard. I don't do it because I don't have time to keep track. I don't have time to try to remember what story I told one person versus what story I told another person. I've been writing publicly since 2001. There's literally thousands of people that eagerly look forward to catching me out. The closest anyone came was when David Pacman was trying to hold me accountable for something that he said I'd written something like 12 years, I think it was 12 years before. I didn't remember writing it, and it didn't sound like something that I would have written, but I couldn't remember, and so I was kind of hemming and hawing a little bit, and I'm sure I looked a little shady. But when I looked it up afterwards, I realized that he was quoting the headline from a WorldNet Daily column of mine. I never wrote the headlines. And so I knew, at that point I realized that I hadn't written what he was attacking me for not writing. So if you tell the truth as best you know it, as best you understand it, you don't have to constantly be trying to cover up for things. So, why am I suspicious of the latest news? Because I'm suspicious of everything. I believe that the official story is never 100% correct. Never. If you look at any major event, what you see is that the news story, the official story, has a tendency to transform as the narrative about it begins to shift. And so when I say that you have to question the narrative, what's the narrative that we see with regards to this recent event in New Zealand? Once again, we have a fairly inexplicable mass shooting, and immediately we have a major push for gun control. Are those two things connected? Is there a causal relationship between them? We don't know. We can't know. That's why you will not hear me saying, this was X, or this was not X. I've never set foot in New Zealand. For all I know, there is no actual New Zealand, that they actually filmed the movies in Middle Earth and claimed that they did it in a place called New Zealand. Do I believe that? No, not at all. But when you start hearing things about the reported fact, that the individual reported as being responsible for the incident is traveling around the world to places like Pakistan and to North Korea and other places that are not exactly major tourist destinations. You may recall that I commented on the fact that the guy looked to me like a government agent. It's just like, if you're around the military enough, you know when somebody is military or ex-military. They just walk that way. They just stand a certain way. And the same is also true of military contractors, that whole sort of public-private soldier type that sort of falls in that gray area in between private contractor and mercenary and so forth. And then I did read the manifesto, and as I said, it read to me like the work of multiple parties. I think that more than a few people were involved in writing it. And I have yet to ever see a manifesto that was written in Q&A format. So now I'm not, I'm not saying that, oh, the whole thing was fake. I'm not saying that no one actually got hurt. I don't know anything about it. I know nothing about it. But if I had to guess, I would say that it was, either somebody was, encouraged to do it, or, brought in to do it, or something. I don't know. I'm just saying I don't believe it. And I really don't care if anybody says, oh, that means that you're stupid, or, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, and so forth. It's just, I haven't watched the footage. I have no interest in watching the footage. I have no interest in wallowing in that sort of unpleasantry. And so, no, I don't want you to send me the video file. I've already been sent links to it and stuff. I haven't watched it, nor will I. All I'm saying is that everything that the media tells you is at the very least spun. Everything that they report is at very least attempting to weave some sort of narrative. And I know this because every single article that has ever been written about me has had at least one major factual error. And I include a little bullet point reference in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune that was, I believe, if I recall correctly, 3 sentences long. And my best friend commented that in 3 sentences, they managed to make 3 factual errors. That's the level of error, dishonesty, misreporting happens. And so, when you look, when you know this, I mean, I absolutely know that every time they have done an article about me, they have major factual errors in it. I assume that there is major factual errors in every single article and every single report. What the specific factual error is, I don't know. And so, but what I do know is that if you take anything that is reported in the media as fact, you're going to get it wrong. And so, the obvious narrative is pushing gun control. Gun control is being pushed everywhere. And so, it's not a surprise. We were talking, people have been talking for weeks about, gee, I wonder, we're about overdue for another false flag. Then something like this happens. I mean, when it's that predictable, when it's that obvious, you can assume that there is at least something massively false about it. And so, you guys dropped the discussion about blood in the video. It's irrelevant. The best thing that you can do with all this kind of stuff is to simply stop paying attention to it. Studying the lies gets you caught up in the web. I spend no time watching, watching CNN or Fox or any of that stuff. There's no reason to pay any attention to it. So, anyhow, we talked last night about the unauthorized. I want to say thank you to all of the, let me see here. I want to say thank you to all of the 977 people who have already signed up for the unauthorized, have already subscribed. You know, it's really exciting to see how strongly the Bears have come out for in support of him. In fact, he has already replaced 20% of his members from YouTube in one day. And so I have no doubt whatsoever that he's going to end up replacing 100% of that. And so, you know, spread the word, let people know. And, I mean, I expect that by the time this stream is over in another 40 minutes, we'll probably be over 1,000. And so, I really appreciate the fact that, you know, you people are putting your money where your hearts are. And, you know, it's very important because this is what allows these things to keep going. And so it's very early days, though. What we are doing is just getting started. You know, we were not planning to launch this stuff yet. But it was kind of funny because I'd talked to Owen last week about how, you know, what time frame I thought we should actually start talking about it, not actually launching the whole thing. If you notice, some of the videos that were up there didn't have like covers on them or anything. And so anyhow, that's what I actually spent this morning doing, was putting covers on those things and then testing out the streaming capabilities, which are part of it. We're not looking, no Gospel Bear, we're not looking for any other contributors at the moment. We have a lot of work to do to get the channel up to par. There's a lot of features that we need. There's a lot of things that we need to work on. And if you have ideas, what I'll do is tomorrow I'll put up a thread, and I would encourage all of the unauthorized subscribers who have an idea or who want to request a feature to do so there. Because the more people that we have that are requesting certain features, the more likely it is that we'll be able to get them added in a reasonably near time frame. Obviously, the first thing that we need to do is get the streaming going. The second thing that we need to do is get the super chats added. It's not open source. And so there are dedicated apps that will be coming out, iOS, Android, etc., etc. You know, like I said, this is going to be a much larger thing. This is not and was never intended to be just a web-based YouTube alternative. In fact, one of the reasons that we started doing it is because it offers the ability to reach out well beyond YouTube. And so it's going to take us a little while to do it. And so, just bear with us, because we can't just flip a switch and suddenly have it. Now, they already do have live stream functionality working, but it doesn't have any chat component. It would theoretically be possible to do it via Restream, like I was doing with Stream.me, but there's not really much point in that right away, because there isn't any chat and so forth. So what we want to do is we want to get them to add a good streaming option, have chat built in, and have the ability to switch between a subscriber access chat and open chat. Bear Goldsmithing says, great job with the website. Works great on mobile. I love the feature where I can minimize the video in the corner while I use other apps. So great. I'm glad. Hobby425 says, why not add a chat and friend feature? The beginnings of a social network for us folks, because we're already working on a social network called Social Galactic. At some point in time, we may start bringing these together, but we'll see. Is it possible to get Stefan Molyneux involved in this? Almost certainly not. We'd love to have Stefan involved, but Stefan does his own thing. And Stefan does not like to be involved with things that are outside of his control, which I totally respect. I have no problem with that at all. I think that there is a better than 50-50 chance that Milo will eventually be involved with it. He doesn't have the time to do it now. He's got other fish to fry, but he knows about it. He quite likes it. And I think that if he does get into streaming again at some point in time, that unauthorized might well be a reasonable place for him to do that. What we want to focus on initially is people who are going to help build the audience. So, this is why, we've had a number of people asking us, hey, can I get on this? This is not a YouTube thing. This is, think of it more like an ESPN. And think of Owen as being one show. Think of the Darkstream as being another show. Think of David the Good as being yet another show. And then we've got a couple other potential shows planned. We're talking to some lifestyle people. We're talking to some, for lack of a better term, survival people. We're even talking to a cookbook author. So there's a lot of different possibilities. Would be great if mobile background playback would be implemented. I don't know what mobile background playback is, so it'll help. It'll help if you explain those sort of things. Missouri Bear says, you guys are going to corner the chat scene. Stefan will start begging to be on. Look, we'll always be happy to have Stefan on. I like Stefan. I respect Stefan. I even watched his recent video where he talked about being hunted throughout some city in Canada. I think he said Toronto. I'm not sure. Which is kind of troubling, but the more popular you are, the more people that pay attention to you, the more people that either want a piece of you, want to use your influence for their own purposes, or want to tear you down in some way. And they all have all kinds of different reasons for doing so. And it's not all, it's not all powerful people trying to silence the little guy speaking truth to power. I mean, there is an aspect of that. I have no doubt whatsoever that the reason that Owen was demonetized was because he kept ranting about a specific identity group. Given the fact that people who are from that identity group happen to own the company, happen to run the company that he's dealing with. I mean, it's not exactly a big mystery. Now, does that make it right? No, of course not. It's totally ridiculous. If the advertisers are upset, if you think he's doing or saying things that your advertisers won't like, then take the advertising away. Turn the advertising off. But there's no reason to shut down super chats. There's no reason whatsoever to eliminate memberships. I mean, that's just malicious. And it won't surprise me at all if when Owen, lets them know that he intends to do something about it and pursue his rights, it won't surprise me if they suddenly become a bit more reasonable. I mean, these companies are not Goliath. The lawyers for some of these companies are astonishingly bad. I mean, not good at their jobs at all. I'm not saying that's true of Google and YouTube. In fact, I actually think that based on what I've read, they tend to be at least capable of doing their jobs. But I can tell you with 100% accuracy that some of these big social companies clearly just threw whoever they had at their legal requirements. And I mean, the level of ineptitude is off the charts. And so there's no reason to be intimidated or scared about of these guys in a legal context, because they've had it their own way for so long. They have so many resources that they're weak. Owen would probably say they're weak from sodomy, but I think they're just weak from like a guy who's never lifted weights. I mean, if you think about it, what do their lawyers do other than coach their executives before they get interrogated by another group of politicians? They write contracts where to permit the executives to spend tens and hundreds of millions of dollars to buy other companies. That's very different than taking on an irate big bear and a crack team of really smart lawyers. So, I'll get to the super chats here in a minute. I'm trying to be better about not getting distracted. A lot of people have indicated that they would prefer that I stay more or less on track and then hit all the super chats at once. Napoleon says, thanks for the stream, Vox. I always practice classical guitar while listening to them. Cool. I very much like classical guitar. You're an inspiration for personal growth. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'm attempting to grow personally myself. Actually, these days I'm actually more attempting not to grow. Once you pass 50, it's too easy to get soft. Nick says, I just subscribed to Unauthorized TV. Thank you very much. I appreciate everything you and BB are doing. Thanks to you and Owen, I am pursuing a relationship with Jesus Christ. That's good news. I'm delighted to hear it. And somebody actually asked the question, what made you accept Christ into your heart? the recognition that Jesus Christ is Lord, and we have one choice, and that's when we are going to bend the knee to him, because we are all going to do it. We're either going to do it voluntarily out of gratitude and love, or we're going to do it involuntarily out of fear. And I prefer the former. Let's see here. Gamma chats. No. Yeah. That's funny. Goodwill says, sub to unauthorized today. Started an OB Epic. Phone died halfway through. Restarted. Can't fast forward on mobile. Doesn't start where it stopped. Concerned I might never finish an OB Epic. I have to admit, I have never watched a video there on mobile because I've been, working on it on my computer. So you answered my most obvious question, which was, well, why don't you just forward the video? But again, I would encourage you to tomorrow stop by the blog, voxday.blogspot.com, and leave suggestions. Leave feature requests. A lot of people, because of my slow pattern of speech in these things, a lot of people have requested the ability to either speed up or slow down the video play. These are things that are all eminently doable. It's just a question of what is done first. And so, we'll be talking with the techs, and we'll be letting them know what we would like. They've got other customers too. They've got, other clients and so forth. And so it's not like they're just going to say, oh, okay, well, Vox and the Big Bear want this, so we're going to leap right on it. They might. I don't actually know. And also, it's the weekend. So, but that's why tomorrow will be a good time for you to let us know what it is you'd like to see. Scott says, no, you're not understanding, Scott. He says, not me. I'm a pagan. I only bend the knee to Wotan. What I'm telling you is that you will. You may not now, but you will one day. And so that's what it means when it says every knee shall bow. So let me... John, you're very kind, but my speech is not perfect. My speech is very... I'm usually thinking about what I'm saying something, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say, and I'm editing it before I actually say it. Just because it's so easy to get yourself in trouble these days by saying something that you don't actually mean, or by saying something that you mean that you don't actually want to say, et cetera, et cetera. And so I prefer to be circumspect about my speech, because I know that there's plenty of people that are just, sitting there waiting for me to say something that they can attempt to use to discredit and or disqualify me. I've written 2 books about this. I know how the process works. Jay says, Vox, you mentioned that you suspected that the intergenerational efforts of the globalists suggest some supernatural involvement. Have you written more about this issue? No, not really. It just seems to me to be fairly obvious. Anyone who has children understands how difficult it is to get children to follow in the path that you would like them to. And anyone who has read any history understands how difficult it is for institutions and organizations to keep the organization going on the same path. And so when you look at this steady progress towards some of the events that appear to be described in everything from the Bible to some of the Orthodox Jewish prophecies and so forth. You reach the conclusion fairly rapidly that it's not possible for it to be a solely human, for there to be solely human elements involved. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily demons or the devil. It could be long-lived aliens, immortal vampires, etc., etc. But it's something, Now that's just logic, and logic can be wrong. The fact that you logically deduce these things does not mean that it is necessarily the case. And I realize how crazy that sounds. Beatrix Miles says, listen to unauthorized TV today while gardening made time fly. It's worth more than money. Chef Big Hat says, it's the problem of the third generation. The third generation of leadership will make or break any organization or state. So, all right, let me hop over to the super chats here. I should mention first of all that Oilfield Bear was very generous last night. He just said thank you, and thank you to him. Jordan Peterson's hot cousin contributed $5. Sigma Bear says, narratives are for kids or stupid adults. Always double or triple check important events. Look at the Charlottesville hoax. Fake as the Iraqi weapons of mass destruction. It's true. When you look at any relatively recent historical event, you see how often they're willing to admit that they were lying. Wait another 10 or 15 years, we'll find out what they're lying about now. But remember, 10 or 15 years ago, they were lying. They're probably lying now. Cordell Mitchell says, just sub to Owen on Unauthorized. He's a great guy, and so are you. Greatly appreciate what you guys do. Keep speaking truth and defeat the wizards. Truth is the only thing that does defeat wizards. So it's the most effective weapon that you have. Jeremiah O'Brien says, hey, coach, where does being a terrible liar, therefore always telling the truth, fall on the sociosexual hierarchy? If that's true, it just would indicate that you're probably not a gamma. But to be honest with you, that sort of thing sounds like the kind of thing that gammas and women often say, oh, I don't lie because I'm such a terrible liar. And, what they're actually doing is they're setting the stage so that they can lie later, but you'll think that they're not lying because they've already told you they're a terrible liar. So anyhow, I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm just pointing out that that's a fairly common approach. Regarding unauthorized TV, have you heard of the value for value model, allowing people to contribute what can be very healthy, just not limit them to subscriptions? That doesn't work. That won't work for us. And the reason that I know that is because we have lots of volunteers that are involved in everything from editing Infogalactic to proofreading for Castelia House and so forth. And volunteers require a lot of oversight and managing and instructing. And so, we're already pretty close to maxed out on the number of volunteers that we can usefully utilize. Gospel Bear says, may I be part of unauthorized TV as a contributor? Not right now. Again, we're not this is a alternative to YouTube for a few of us. It's the whole concept is not to build an alternative to YouTube. We're not trying to build another BitChute here. And so I'm delighted that folks like you see this as something desirable. And it's entirely possible that once we have things more set up and stable, it'll make sense to have people like you come on. I hope we're successful enough that does happen. But right now, we need to focus on only bringing on people who are capable of helping significantly grow the audience. Zowie Bear says, the repeal of Smith-Mundt Act during Obama's presidency made it legal to propagandize the American public. Yeah, I mean, that's true, but you know perfectly well they've been doing that for well over a century anyhow. I mean, it always seems a little strange to me that they bother to legalize these things, but there does seem to be rules that evil operates by. And that would be that move to legalize what they were already known to be doing does tend to fit that concept. Frank Underwood says, false flag or not, do you think this event or other events like this will affect the trend towards nationalism? Not in the slightest. This is a discussion we had, a very active argument on the blog after the Norwegian shootings in Utoya. And a lot of people were saying, oh, this is going to set the cause of nationalism back 5 years, 10 years. I said, no, it's not. I said, let's settle this. Let's actually bet that the nationalists are going to do better in the next election than they did in the previous one, despite this. And, my opinion was very much in the minority at the time. And yet, by the time the next election rolled around, sure enough, the nationalists had, did much, much better. Because trends are more important than incidents. People have a tendency to think that incidents cause trends, but it's the other way around. I highly recommend reading Tolstoy's account of the Battle of Borodino if you want to better understand this concept. Muffhead says, I for sure doubt the narrative. I hope the truth comes out someday. This, however, will not stop omni-nationalism. It is inevitable. I agree. And again, for the Christians, we know the nations are going to survive. We absolutely know they will. We know that the Tower of Babel is going to fail again. So, when we know these things, we can draw conclusions about the future from them. Frank Underwood asks, are omegas more rare than gammas? Yes. And what are the ratio between them? I don't know. If I'm uncertain, how do I distinguish gammas from omegas? Gammas are part of the social hierarchy. Omegas are not. If you've got a group of, losers sitting at the table talking about their role-playing game that weekend, those are gammas. The omega is the guy sitting over, at the corner of a table by himself, not talking to anyone. Omegas are excluded from the hierarchy. Taming Strange says, just got done reading Jordanetics. Couldn't put it down. Great job. I'm going to read SJW's Always Lie next. Thanks. I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed it so much. I hope you'll enjoy the SJW's books. I would also point out to everyone that the audiobooks are now on, I think we've got like 8 or 10 audiobook samples up on the Unauthorized now. And so, it's a, we're going to be putting up more and more as time goes on. We've got like 47 audiobooks out, so we've got plenty of content that we can put up there. And what we try to do is put a long enough section, whether it's, 45 minutes or 2 hours, that it's worth listening to for itself. It's not just an ad that you're going to, we're not going to like leave it at a cliffhanger, that kind of thing. Peach Tea Bear says, hey Vox, I subscribed to Unauthorized TV today. Thanks very much. Just wanted to let you know it's very mobile friendly. I'm very hopeful for everyone on the platform. That's good to know because, like I said, I haven't really messed around with the mobile aspects much. Porter Basin Bear Hodges, which is a strangely Woodhouseian name. You just need a first name like Percival to go with that. Percival Porter Basin Bear Hodges. There are good things happening at 21 Studios. Conferences and content aimed towards men might be something to check out. Thanks for letting me know. We already talked about what made me accept Christ. Jesus Christ of Nazareth, to be specific. Brazilian Bear says, off topic, but do you know what O'Sullivan's Law is? Yes, although I don't remember at the moment. If you do you think that's what is happening to the Republican Party? Is this that agreement about voting or something? Let me see here. Oh, we better know that as a form of Jerry Pournelle's iron law of bureaucracy. But I guess O'Sullivan's would be. Yeah, this is the law that says any organization or enterprise that is not expressly right-wing will become left-wing over time. Yes, I do think that that's part of what's happening to the Republican Party, but I actually think that the Republican Party has always been a bit of a sham. You know, the Republican Party predates the conservative movement. The Republican Party was never really right-wing or particularly nationalistic. They've always been the party of free trade and therefore globalism. So I think it applies to our perception of it. I think it applies to the conservative movement. I don't think it applies to the Republican Party per se. Peter Bedrosian said, just subscribed for premium level. Awesome. The fight has just gotten bigger, folks. Support Owen, Vox, and others that could come eventually to unauthorized TV. They're not giving us a choice. They're not playing fair, so we have to go elsewhere. It's not rocket science. And we will, and we are, and we're competent. They were smart and competent, but now you got to keep in mind, the people that are running YouTube are not the people that started it. The people that are running Microsoft are not the people that started it. It's just like a sitcom. You watch a television show, a sitcom, and it's really funny. It's really well written. The dialogue sparkles. The characters are interesting and funny. And then over time, they start to become the characters start to become caricatures of themselves. And what's happened is that the people that were involved with the show, even if it's the same producer or whatever, they don't have the same writers. They don't necessarily have the same people directing. They don't have the A team involved anymore. It's like the C team. And eventually it just, becomes unwatchable, and then the show dies. Usually 2 seasons later than it should have. The same thing happens with companies. YouTube does not have their A team there anymore. Doc O says, Big Bear's thumbnails on unauthorized TV are epic. Yeah, the gentleman who is responsible for that is doing a crack job, and I felt really bad for him yesterday because I sent him an email saying, hey, you need to download all the videos like now. But, he's already got Big Bear caught up from our starting point. So very happy about that. Dylan Bear says, Jesus saved me. You and Owen helped. Thank you. You're welcome. I mean, this is how we repay the people who did that for us. Be an example, be a model, speak the truth, share the gospel. Hobby 425 says, Vox, what happened to the British Canadians, the one that fought the States and Germans for king and country? I cannot find my nation in my homeland. Well, you've been invaded, and you've been demoralized, and you've been corrupted. So, be your nation. Build your nation. Get married, have kids. Essa Graham says, I found this surprise $8 in my account and just wanted to give it to something good. Thank you for the work you do. Well, thank you very much. That's like a parable almost. I have to admit, I enjoy the Secret King's super chats. I have never met someone smarter than me in real life. No doubt you haven't. Charles Carlson says, thanks again. Thank you again. And you're welcome. Drew Royster said, live polling functionality would be awesome for when you want to know what your viewers think. Yeah, I would love to have a poll here on YouTube. And that's definitely on my list of things that I would like to see us add. Try and Speak says, contribute any dollar amount they want, not volunteers. We may do that eventually, but I don't want to, honestly, I don't want to let things get out of control. To be honest with you, I didn't know that the subscription stuff would even work. I found out like 5 minutes before that we had everything actually connected. So I'm happy that it worked, but the last thing I wanted was to have some situation where somebody was trying to give us a couple $100 or something, and the whole thing didn't even work. So one step at a time. We're going to take this one step at a time. At times, maybe it's not going to be quite as quick as you'd like. At other times, it's going to seem like we dropped a whole bunch of stuff, out of a blue sky on you. But we will be progressing steadily. Duralex Sedlex says they do it in secret and then cover their ass by legalizing as soon as they can. I think that's a reasonable description of it, yeah. Northern Sterncroft says, speaking of Molyneux, anything helpful to say about bridging the gap between his beliefs and yours? Well, I think that he needs to, he needs to come to the point where he genuinely believes in God and Jesus Christ. That's the big one. And I think and I hope and I kind of expect that he will make that step one day. But we'll see. No disrespect, you seem annoyed with anarchists. Yeah, I understand it. I'm a little bit of an emotional anarchist myself, but anarchy just flat out doesn't work. There's no logical argument that you can present that I can't dismantle very easily. It's not something I've even bothered to address because unlike free trade and unlike free speech, there are at least coherent, seemingly reliable arguments for those things. But in the case of anarchy, whether you're talking about the whole anarcho-capitalism or whatever, that's just as utopian and fantastic as the communists, in my opinion. Even when I was a full-blown small L political libertarian, I never bought into the ANCAP stuff. Slammerai Jamdown says, what's a good method for discovering interest in game mechanics? Playing games. What's the most important thing to keep in mind to make it fun? On the story side, suspension of disbelief. On the mechanic side, repetitive motion that allows your reflexes to go into the zone. How much time do we have left here? I can't tell there. Okay. Well, we should wrap it up here. I'm gonna go through these super chats, and then I'd encourage you all, if you haven't subscribed yet to unauthorized.tv, remember it's www.unauthorized.tv. If you're a bear who was a member of Owen's channel, I'd encourage you to sign up for a Feed the Bear subscription. We've committed to making sure that he gets paid as much off those as he was getting from the YouTube stuff. And if you want to support the overall effort, sign up for one of the regular subscriptions that will also go to get divided among the creators. So that will also help out Owen. But if you want to focus on keeping the big bear in honey, the Feed the Bear subscription is the way to go. Tom Forsyth said, where do Asperger's people fit on the hierarchy? Most of them are on the lower side, omegas and gammas. Wolf 3500 says, an American counterterrorism analyst said the shooting was a Zionist operation to distract from Israeli massacres in the Gaza Strip. Your thoughts? I think that's highly unlikely. Israel doesn't seem overly bothered. I think far be it from me to have any idea what the priorities of the Israeli government are, but they have an election coming up. They've got all kinds of corruption and criminal investigations going on with regards to the prime minister. I don't think they need any distractions from, whatever the latest flare-up in the Gaza Strip is. I think it's much more I think whatever it is, it has much more to do with attempting to disarm the New Zealand public. Although I don't know why that would be something to focus on. Unless, if you want to get conspiratorial, think about this. Where have a lot of the rich people decided to go because they think they'll be safe? New Zealand. So where would you want to make sure that hoi polloi doesn't have lots of weapons? Well, the place that you plan to go to try to be safe. I'm not saying that's the case. I have absolutely no idea. I'm just saying that I would find that logic to be more compelling than the Zionist distraction theory. Meisterbear says a conservative today is a Republican trying to keep alive a social program started by a Democrat. That is sadly a very apt description and definition of a modern conservative. Joaquino Greco says, hi Vox, what advice would you give a super high IQ 180 plus Sigma with alpha tendencies losing in a fight to an alpha? Well, I would suggest using that super high IQ to not lose the fight. That would be my first thought. If you're a 180 IQ individual, you probably shouldn't be asking a 150 IQ individual what to do. You can barely talk to me, according to the communication gap theory. So, anyhow, my usual strategy in dealing with alphas is I don't fight them. I avoid them, and I do whatever I need to do, as long as it's not humiliating or something. But basically, I just stay out of conflict with them. Stone Dust Bear says, I've answered does evil exist question for myself. Okay. Assuming that evil action means that doing it knows that it will make more harm than good and still does it, yes, it exists. It doesn't point to the existence of God. What do I miss here? What you're missing is that evil doesn't have anything to do with making more harm than good. You are relying upon, you're trying to define evil using utilitarian philosophy or using utilitarian logic, and that won't get you there. So your assumption is wrong. Evil does not mean doing evil does not mean knowingly doing what will make more harm than good. Evil is opposing the will of God. And so I would suggest revisiting what you think evil is. So, but I'm sure we'll address that more in detail at some point. Let me get through these here quickly. It's a good question though, Stone Dust Bear. I think I might put that on the blog tomorrow, just because I think it's an interesting thing for people to discuss. Slavic Striz says, I think it's great you have this TV thing. Just subscribe and can't wait for the donation straight to you guys and not YouTube. Awesome. Where are lambdas in the social sexual hierarchy? They're not. They have their own system. John Rampton says, Happy St. Patrick's Day, Vox. Thank you. Likewise. I am actually, as you know, part Irish. Although I think Space Bunny was a little disappointed because she's always been more cognizant of her Irish background than I am of mine. And so I think she was a little surprised when she found out that we were both about the same amount Irish. Brazilian Bear asks again, where are the lambdas in the hierarchy? They're not. They have their own thing. Remember, it's a socio-sexual hierarchy, so gay men are not playing in that pool. Pale Rider Bear says, Molyneux seems to be a pretty decent moral person who is looking for the truth. Jesus has made extraordinary believers out of much more hard-hearted and even downright evil people. Praying helps, though. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, and it's Stefan's dedication to the truth, the small t truth, that I believe will ultimately lead him to the capital T truth. But everything in its own time. Anyhow, thanks for tuning in tonight. The link to unauthorized.tv is right below the video. Hope to see you there. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and see if my prediction was correct. And let's see here. Of course. Oh, it was indeed. Thank you very much. We're now at 1,025 subscribers. So great work. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you the next time. This is the Darkstream. Always doubt the narrative. I'm Vox Day.